Hallo, ich bin's, Robin, Deutschlehrer mit Core Languages, and today I'm walking around campus of the beautiful College of Charleston, and behind me is a gigantic apple. Have you ever seen an apple bigger than this one? Now, some of you may say, yeah, I've seen bigger apples, but for some of you, this may be the biggest apple you've ever seen. Well, when I say things like bigger and the biggest, I use what's called the comparative and the superlative. The comparative helps me compare two nouns with each other. For example, this apple is big, but this apple is bigger. The superlative helps me compare three or more nouns to each other. This apple is big, this one's bigger, and this one is the biggest. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to use the comparative in German so that you can start comparing things in your German sentences. I would say, los geht's und viel Spaß beim Deutschlernen.
Der Comparative Review, a review of the comparative. In English and in German, adjectives can be placed before or after a noun. If they are placed after a noun, they are called a predicate adjective, and they do not take case endings. The comparative form simply adds er to the adjective. Some adjectives and adverbs with only one syllable add an umlaut to the stem vowel. For example, schwer, schwerer. Schwer means heavy, schwerer, heavier. We simply added er. Alt, which means old, älter. We simply added er, but we also had a stem vowel change. A turned to ä. Spät, late, später, later. For example, du bist älter als ich. You are older than me. Ein Motorrad ist schwer, aber ein Auto ist schwerer. A motorcycle is heavy, but a car is heavier. Some polysyllabic adjectives, or adjectives that have multiple syllables in English, form the comparative with the help of the word more. For example, more beautiful or more difficult. German never does this. Regardless of the number of syllables, we only ever add er. For example, einfach, which is simple. Einfacher, simpler. Sicher, which is safe or secure. Sicherer, more secure. Gesellig, which is sociable. Geselliger, more sociable. For example, Sven ist gesellig, aber Hannah ist geselliger. Sven is sociable, but Hannah is more sociable. Eine Bank ist sicherer als deine Wohnung. A bank is more secure than your apartment. In English and in German, some adjectives are irregular and their comparative form has more spelling changes than er or an umlaut. In some cases, the words are altogether different. For example, gern, which is like. Lieber, which is rather or like more. Gesund, which is healthy. Gesünder, healthier. Sometimes people also say gesunder. Gut, which is good. Besser, better, which is an altogether different word. For example, ich spiele gern Golf, aber ich spiele lieber Tennis. I like to play golf, but I prefer playing tennis, or I rather play tennis. Aprikosen sind gut, aber Apfelsinen sind besser. Apricots are good, but oranges are better. If an adjective is placed before a noun, it is an attributive adjective. And in German, attributive adjectives take endings based on the gender and the case of the noun they modify, and depending on whether we're using a definite or an indefinite article. This is true for the comparative form of attributive adjectives, but it's also important to note that some adjectives cannot form a comparative. For example, handmade, handgemacht. Things cannot be more handmade. Either they're handmade or not. In a sentence, we would start with an article or a determiner. Then we would have the adjective and the comparative form. And then we have an ending based on the gender and the case of the noun. Here are some examples of attributive adjectives in the nominative case. For example, ein großes Haus, a big house. The adjective is big, and we added the ending es for a neutral nominative noun with an indefinite article. Or der gute, handgemachte Tisch, the good, handmade table. The adjectives are gut and handgemacht, and we added the ending e for a masculine nominative noun with a definite article. Now watch what happens to the comparative adjectives that are attributive. Ein größeres Haus. The comparative adjective is größer, and we added the ending es for the neutral nominative noun with the indefinite article. Der bessere, handgemachte Tisch. We used besser, which is the comparative adjective of gut, and we added the ending e, which is the ending for a masculine nominative noun with a definite article. We left handgemachte the way it was in the first sentence because something cannot be more handmade. We use the comparative when comparing two things of equal or unequal size, speed, or other qualities, and we can also use it when making a negative comparison. When in English we say as, or not as, in German we say so, wie. Whenever we say so, wie, the adjective does not use the comparative form. When in English we say than, in German we say als, and als uses the comparative form. Zum Beispiel, ist so athletisch wie sein Bruder. He is as athletic as his brother. The adjective is athletisch, and because we used so wie, we do not use the comparative form of the adjective. But sie ist sympathischer als ihre Schwester. She is nicer or more pleasant than her sister. In this example, we used als, so we used the comparative adjective sympathischer. Ich bin nicht so politisch engagiert wie meine Freundin. I'm not as politically involved as my girlfriend. The adjective is engagiert, and because I used so wie, I do not use the comparative form. Here are some Beispiele. Let's compare Deutschland and die USA. For example, I can use the adjective klein, small, schwierig, difficult, kalt, cold, and viel, which is much. Deutschland ist kleiner als die USA. Germany is smaller than the United States. Deutsch ist eine schwierigere Sprache als Englisch. German is a more difficult language than English. Es ist kälter in Berlin als in Houston. It is colder in Berlin than in Houston. Es leben mehr Leute in den USA. More people live in the United States. Hier are some Beispiele that show how we can compare der Wein, the wine. For example, we could say süß, sweet, trocken, dry, or köstlich, exquisite. For example, Gewürztraminer ist süßer als Chardonnay. Gewürztraminer is sweeter than Chardonnay. Müller-Thurgau ist trockener als Pinot Grigio. Müller-Thurgau is drier than Pinot Grigio. And Riesling ist köstlicher als Spätburgunder. Riesling is more exquisite than Spätburgunder. Let's practice. Üben wir. Welche Antwort ist richtig? Try to choose the correct comparative adjective between lang, long, and breit, wide. Dieses Buch ist länger als der Herr der Ringe, oder dieses Buch ist breiter als der Herr der Ringe. The book is longer. Dieses Buch ist länger als der Herr der Ringe. This book is longer than The Lord of the Rings. How about this example? Die Giraffe ist natürlich größten als ich oder größer als ich. The correct comparative adjective is größer. Die Giraffe ist natürlich größer als ich. The giraffe, of course, is taller than me.
Vielen Dank fürs Zusehen. I hope you now have a better understanding of how to use the comparative in German. As always, if you have more questions, feel free to comment, or if you're interested in joining one of our German courses with a live instructor, feel free to message us directly. Das war's, vielen Dank und bis zum nächsten Mal.